Hi, Deacon Ed McCormick here, and I want to reflect with you this morning on the various ways in which people in our country are responding to immigrants, legal and illegal. Here's the first way that we are seeing more and more. We're seeing a legal response. That is, the response that our government is having and many people in this country, including Christians, is a legal response. In other words, the response is they've broken the law. They've come here illegally. And while this response is accurate, there is a danger here in that it reduces the person to a broken law. It ignores the fact that they've often come from horrific, very dangerous, terrible situations. By reducing the person to a broken law, it ignores the fact that they are persons, that they have children, that they're in need, that they need our compassion and mercy. And so I'm very wary of this legal response from a Christian point of view, from the point of view of the gospel, especially when it reduces the person and the situation. Furthermore, this legal response often ignores the fact that our current immigration system is broken. It ignores the fact that the effort to try and come here legally, that system doesn't work anymore. And in fact, many people who are here illegally try and comply with this system and now are being arrested by ICE. So that legal response, that's not a Christian response. That is not our first response. Here's a second response that I see happening now, and it's that of scapegoating. This practice of scapegoating, that is, of blaming the person, the immigrant who's come here legally or illegally, as the cause of all of our woes. That's why we have high inflation. That's why there's crime. We've heard President Trump scapegoat immigrants all the time, blaming them for murders and crime and rape and the infusion of drugs. And this practice of scapegoating is an ancient practice that involves cooperating with the forces of evil. It was the forces of scapegoating that got Romans and Jews to execute Jesus. It was the forces of scapegoating that got Christians to be martyred. It was the forces of scapegoating that caused Christians to attack Jews. It caused us to attack and kill women claiming they were witches. And in this country, African Americans have been scapegoated, Native Americans, the Irish, the Italians, whoever is the latest immigrant has been scapegoated. This is a serious sin. This is a real danger for any Christian, any Catholic to be involved in scapegoating. Instead, we need to take a response to immigrants that is shaped by Jesus and his ministry. Watch what Jesus does in his ministry. Watch as he reaches out to the sick and the needy, to the blind, to the paralytic, to the leper, to blind Bartimaeus, to the hungry as he's preaching. He's always seeing them as people, not as problems. He's always seeing their need, not the ways in which they interrupt our lives. He acts out of mercy and compassion, and his priority is always the most vulnerable, the most needy. When he's walking into the city of Jericho and blind Bartimaeus is sitting on the street side and he's shouting out, "Jesus, son of David, have pity on me," and he's banging with his stick. Jesus' disciples tell Bartimaeus, "Be quiet, leave him alone." And Jesus instead says, "No, bring him to me." And he heals him. You see, Jesus always acts with the compassion and mercy of God. He always sees the person, sees the need. And now we, as his disciples, need to act this way. And let me conclude with another way in which we, as Christians, as followers of Jesus, must respond to the immigrant. And it's out of the lens of seeing every person created in the image and likeness of God. We are called to see every person, legal, illegal, whether they have insurance or not, as created in the image and likeness of God, and therefore that means they are due respect. And the respect is not based on their income or whether they have a job or don't have a job. They are created by God and therefore deserve respect. They deserve to be treated with dignity. And that means they need to be treated in a way that they get access to adequate legal counsel, adequate housing, adequate access to food and health care. And so when ICE is arresting people and putting them in these detention facilities, these people, because they are created in the image and likeness of God, deserve due process. They deserve adequate legal representation. They deserve safe conditions, good food, adequate conditions. So my friends, as Christians, as disciples of Jesus, we cannot respond to the situation of immigrants with merely a narrow legalistic approach, and we certainly cannot scapegoat them. We have to respond with the mercy and compassion of Jesus. We have to treat each person as created in the dignity and image of God. See you in the next video.